Hello.
Hey, Fernando, how's it going?
Good, and you?
Good, good. You can hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you fine.
Nice, nice. Nice background you've got there. Whereabouts is that?
That's actually in Tallinn, Estonia. I was gonna just change it and.
Oh no, it's cool. You can you can keep it. That's fine.
Cool.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Have you been there? Are you from there?
No, my story is interesting. I'm originally from Venezuela, a city called Maracaibo. Super hot, super humid, but I now live in Toronto. That picture was when I was selected by Estonia as part of their Work in Estonia program. They flew me up there. Loved the city, really cool. And then I visited last year again because I was selected by the Helsinki government, or an entity within the Helsinki city government, as one of the 15 participants of the program that they call the 90-Day Fin, which is a program to attract top talent into Finland. And as you know, Tallinn, Helsinki, they're a short ferry away. So I went there and visited again.
And did you take this particular image?
Actually, no, I took a similar one, but this one is much better.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, it's great. I spent a lot of time up in Riga, in Latvia. I traveled to Estonia and Lithuania, so I've been to like Vilnius and places like that, and I've been to Gdansk in Poland, and they all have these very beautiful old towns, like you can see there in the background.
Yeah, the old town in Tallinn it's beautiful. I think it's one of the most Instagrammable places I've been to. Yeah. Although I'm not big on Instagram, but the pictures are just beautiful everywhere you look. So
yeah. So you're based up in Canada right now?
Right now, but I'm moving. So
okay. And where are you going to next? Are you allowed to say? Is it a secret?
Well, no anymore. I'm going to Helsinki again.
Okay.
Yeah. So I love to move. I'm a bit of a nomad. I wish I could move more, but COVID, because I was, I work from home. I've been working from home for 5.5 years now.
Yeah.
And I was applying to a nomad visa in Spain, and then I saw that Estonia had released their own nomad visa, so I said maybe apply to that, and then Greece released another one, but COVID just shut all the doors down. And
yeah, it does make it makes everything quite difficult. And have you ever been to the UK?
I haven't. Oh, wow. Funny enough, before COVID, I was supposed to go. In discussions to take a position in the UK with a chain of, I guess, grocery stores. Yeah. They were ramping up their data analytics department, but that also failed because of COVID. So.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I mean, hopefully one day you can make it out here and check it out. We've got some beautiful places in this country as well. Obviously, sure. Everybody's familiar with London, but it's the same as every other metropolitan city. City's a city, isn't it? It's got all the life of of a city and all the hustle and bustle.
Yeah, and I'm not into big cities, to be honest. That's what I like Tallinn a lot, because it's like this old town and with a little bit of a city next to it.
So if you prefer that sort of thing, then I think what would be right up your street is York. Have you ever heard of York?
Of course, yes.
Yeah. So York is it's a city, but very, very old school, very surrounded by medieval walls, and it has castle fortifications around it. And inside there's so much history with the streets, and they have little narrow winding streets, and they have a lot of the buildings have been that way for hundreds and hundreds of years, with cobbled streets and little alleyways, and you can get lost in there. It's
good. I'll remember to stop by. There's a suburb around here where I am that's called York as well, so I won't forget.
Cool.
But yeah, I love those medieval towns. Toledo in Spain, it's another city that I love. Well, it's a town, really. It's a medieval town.
Whereabouts? Sorry, say that again.
Toledo.
Toledo. Yeah.
Okay. It's outside of Madrid.
I've heard of that. Yeah.
It's basically a walls town, medieval, very pretty.
I spend quite a bit of time down in Granada, which is Andalusia, not far from Malaga, and there they have the Alhambra.
Alhambra,
the Alhambra is a huge sometimes Christian, sometimes Muslim fortification, depending on who was like in control of the country at that time. And the views from there are just amazing. Yeah, really, really nice.
Yeah, I've heard it's a very pretty interesting part of Spain. I haven't been, but a good friend of mine from school, she married a guy from there, and she showed me some good pictures, and it's in my bucket list. Now that I'm going to be closer to that area of the world, I'll probably visit more often.
So do you manage to get back to Venezuela often, or
No, it's a crazy place, unfortunately. And
okay.
I came here because of the political turmoil with my
Yeah.
parents. I was a teenager. So my parents are here, my sister is here. I only have one aunt still left in Venezuela, and my in-laws are still in Venezuela. Funny enough, I married a Venezuelan girl who I met here. So
that's quite lucky, because then you can have that shared cultural background, and you would have that shared history of food and stuff like that, and music. It's
I tend to do, every time I say, why would I do this or I wouldn't do that, I ended up doing it because I came here as a teenager, and of course Canada is a very multicultural place, and met people from all over the world, dated girls from different countries, and then married Venezuela. Similar to Finland. It's a country that I've only heard of because I'm a big fan of Formula One. So in the 90s, I was a big fan of Mika Hakkinen. And then my sister's friend, during her exchange years in high school, she picked Finland as a destination. And I always said, why would you go to Finland? So.
Yeah, like what's there? It's I've heard that it's very beautiful. The people they like the quiet, and they like to be kind of they like their solitude and stuff like that. They're very, very calm people.
It's surprising, and apologies for the Finns that are listening, but Finns are very quiet and they love being quiet. It's surprising that even the vacuum cleaner or the Hoover for you that I had in my apartment when I was there for 3 months, it's the quietest thing I've ever heard. It makes no noise. And I took a train to a city called Turku, which is very close to Helsinki. And that was the quietest train ride I've ever felt. Like my ears were like buzzing from how quiet everything was. It's surprising, but Finns are very genuine. That's what I liked about it.
Yeah.
I'm also a Latino, but I don't sort of like the Latino culture in the sense that people are very loud and extremely friendly in a sense. Finns are the type of person that if they don't want to interact with you, they won't, and they don't want to be polite about it. Here in Canada, everybody's very polite, and they will interact with you even though if they don't want to. But that leads to situations where you invite the person over and they say, yeah, sure, I'll go, but they never come. Right? Finns are not like that. If you say, hey, will you come? And they are not interested, they will say no. But if they say yes, then they'll be friends for life, right? And I love that about them.
I think I'd prefer that, because I hate being let down by people. Like if you 100%. Arrange something, I would much rather somebody was straight and just said, no, I don't want to, or I've got something else to do. I prefer that, because then you're not distracted and thinking about, are they going to come or not? Yeah,
100%. So I was very impressed with that culture, because people here, of course, were making jokes when I was telling them that I was going to be in Finland, and they were saying, they're very cold, they're very introvert. And I don't think that's the case. It's just like, if they're interested, they're interested. And if they're not, they're not. And they're not afraid to tell you that they're not. And I think that's lovely. And it's the same for business, right? One of the things that we discuss a lot with the other people that were selected for the program was that in North America, at least, which is an area I'm familiar with, doing business is hard because you have to sort of navigate through how much people are overselling themselves or their businesses. It's like, you get a client or you get a potential partner and they will tell you, yes, I can do that. Yes, I can do that. Yes, sure, I do that. And then when you dig deeper, they might not be able to do it, right? They're just trying to get the business. In Finland, it's surprisingly funny because you tell them, hey, I like this. Would you be able to do that? Or would your product do this? And they will be like, no. That's it. The conversation. So that's great, because then you know exactly what you're getting. And they're not afraid to share their knowledge and their contacts. Like, it's really easy. I mean, Finland is a small country, right? So everybody is like 2 degrees of separation, right? But if you say, hey, I need to talk to somebody that knows this, or I need to talk to somebody in this office, people will get you in touch with them. So.
Yeah, that's cool. So, so your business, or your sort of main interest is cybersecurity, right?
No, actually, it's data, and I know that's
Okay.
a very broad aspect, and there's a big aspect of it in the cybersecurity space.
Yeah.
But I'm a data engineer by trade. I never really developed software, although I'm a software engineer. I started my career developing data systems and databases for assisting medical research. So I was working with organizations like Queen's University, Harvard University, Vanderbilt, in creating free-to-use data systems for researchers trying to do their jobs. Because what people sort of don't understand, and maybe they do now because of COVID, but developing a new product, a vaccine, medication, a new molecule is super expensive, right?
Yeah.
So if a physician is trying to do something novel and they don't have the budget, it's hard to go and buy those commercial licenses for software, for medical software, because those licenses are, in the hundreds of thousands of dollars per year. So we were developing free-to-use tools for them. But then I sort of got the bug into the startup world, and became one of the founding members of a company here in Toronto that was doing big data analytics for healthcare companies. And then I started consulting with startups. I realized I really like the startup space. And I've been doing anything from like healthcare to fintech, to marketing, to just business consulting in general.
And how did you first get into that, or how did you know that that was something that you'd like to pursue as a career?
Funny enough, it was one of those things that I said, why would I do this, right? It started back in university when I started university doing electronic engineering. I thought I was going to like that. And the first year I had to take a computer programming course, and I thought that was so easy. It's like, this is stupid. Why am I taking this? But everybody else was struggling. And there was another guy in there who ended up being a friend of mine who was also very good at it. And he said to me right then, it's like, I'm switching, I'm going to software engineer. And I said, why would I do that? This is so easy. Why? So I continued another year in electronic engineering, and I didn't like it. And then I said, if I don't like this and I think it's hard and the other thing is easy, well, I might as well just go do the easy stuff, right?
Yeah.
So I switched to software engineering. But one thing that I found is like database systems were really hard for me to understand. It was one of my weak points. So I decided we're going to have to study a lot harder on this. And I did. And then my first internship was at the Canadian Cancer Institute, developing databases, because I had studied so hard. When it came to apply it in the real world, it was like, oh, this is easy. So I kept doing that. And I never really took on any software development project or anything like that. I just stayed in the database world. And then, of course, it sort of coincided with this explosion in data from businesses all over the world with social media. And these new technologies like NoSQL, big data. And I just sort of rode that bandwagon because I was already there and I was learning. So I tried to learn new things. And that's how it sort of developed organically.
And how long have you been doing it for?
So since I graduated, that was in 2008. So we're talking about 14 years. But I was doing it sort of ad hoc before, helping other small businesses and whatnot. So in total, it's probably like 16 years.
Oh, I sort of lost you a bit there. Sorry, I think the signal just broke up. Could you say that again? You said the last thing I heard was it was 14 years.
14 years since my graduation, but I've been doing it a couple of years before that while I was in school. So probably like 16 years.
Yeah. And so where do you see, where do you see like big data going? What's going to happen? Is there going to be a massive integration of AI with big data and analysis? Is that something that you see coming?
Yeah, I mean, that's already happening. I think where we're moving towards is anything related to privacy.
Yeah.
The new startups that are being developed there, and as you said, I've worked with some VC funds on trying to see what markets are popping up, which ones is hard to invest and bet in that technology. And where a lot of these investment funds, VCs, are going to, it's privacy. How can you have the tools that you have right now with privacy embedded in them, right? One of the funny things is like, just like cybersecurity, it becomes an inconvenience. The more privacy you add to the tool, right? So if you want a fast system, you want it to just be able to access any kind of data.
Yeah.
Don't put any protection on it, right? But then that leads to being vulnerable.
Then you compromise the system and leave it open. But I was thinking the exact same thing today or yesterday. Sometimes when I log into, like a Google account, and if maybe I've changed my password on a different machine and I've got two-factor authentication, I come back and I'm using like my home machine rather than my work laptop. And then I have to go through this whole rigmarole of, validating who I am and signing in. And yeah, it is like really inconvenient. And I appreciate it's secure, but it it's a pain, isn't it, to do that? So
It is.
are you thinking of developing a system or working with startups that develop a way around that?
Well, yes, but more in the data space. So the funny thing about data is that you don't see it. So for people that are not technical about it, they're not exposed to it, it's really hard to explain or for them to understand what I do, because it's not something you see. But basically, all your data is stored in Google. It's encrypted, right, by Google, and then it goes through different layers of security. And then when it's sent to you, it's encrypted again, right? So what that means is the system has to be so much larger than it needs to be to maintain the same performance as the same system if it wasn't encrypted, right?
Yeah.
And it also leads to a lot of engineering overhead, right? So it no longer becomes a data issue. Then you have a cybersecurity issue, and then you need infrastructure issue. So yeah, you need a larger team to deal with that. So what a lot of startups are trying to do now, what I think, and I think that's a place to go, is why can't we have an integrated solution? Like maybe just like the simple database that we had 20 something years ago without so much security, but with the security embedded in it. So you don't have to worry about it. Now you need, cybersecurity engineers, you need infrastructure engineers, software engineers, right? So it's more like a database as a service, but like a secure database as a service.
So with the database as a service, I've seen a lot of companies online that are starting up like that, where instead of having all of your services in-house, where you need to maintain the equipment, which can be quite costly, and you might have to have either an internal or an external team, you would just outsource that and outsource the servers and outsource the databases to a smaller company for like a monthly fee. And that's the kind of thing you're talking about, is that right?
Yeah, and that's another trend with the cloud, right? With cloud, you're exchanging CapEx for OpEx. It doesn't mean it's going to be cheaper on the cloud. It just means that the structure of your expenditure is different. It could be cheaper, it could be more expensive. But it's about what you mentioned. It's like you shift that to somebody else. Because right now, like for example, within the cloud, you can do that. You can have a database as a service on the cloud. AWS, for example, provides it. Google does it as well.
Yeah.
But then if you want it to be secure and you want to host healthcare data, for example, or financial data, you have to go and get it audited to make sure that you prove that you are, HIPAA compliant here in North America for healthcare data, or SOC Type 2 compliant for financial data. And a lot of that requires you to implement those type of systems that I'm talking about. It's like, okay, I have my database, now I'm going to have a layer of security on top of that, and another layer of security for access control. But what a lot of startups are doing right now is being able to offer that whole holistic service. So you can say, all you have to do is show this, and then you'll be compliant out of the box. And that is, for example, encrypting data within the database. Because one of the issues is if you encrypt data, you cannot search it. And the database relies on being able to be searched, right?
Yeah.
So how do you solve those issues? So that is what's happening right now. And I've seen some couple of interesting ideas. Some of them even include blockchain components of it.
Yeah, I was just going to say, would the solutions include the blockchain for validation?
Yeah, that's a path a lot of people are taking. And I think the good side of that is that you're shifting a lot of the infrastructure side to the network, right? Because you're leveraging the existence of a network rather than you having to build your own.
Yeah, that's fascinating. So, where do you think what else will blockchain? How else will it affect privacy and data? For me, my knowledge of the blockchain is very limited. So it's cryptocurrency, it's NFTs, it's those basic uses. But the actual technology behind it and how it utilizes the networks, I don't have any information about that. Do you know anything about that?
Yes, I'm actually giving a talk, sort of a training course to a group in Finland at the end of the month about it. And basically, I see the blockchain in its very infancy still, even though we have these cryptocurrencies are major now, and people are transacting on it. Because I think the real power of the blockchain is not the cryptocurrency space, is the ability to decentralize the ownership of assets. Okay. And NFTs are a good example, right?
Yeah.
Before NFTs, if you have a piece of art, you want to sell it and it's expensive, you have to get it authenticated. And you're authenticated with people that are really good at it, but they've been fooled before because they're human, so they make mistakes as well. Yeah. With the NFTs, you provide a chain of custody of an asset for basically free, because it costs you a little bit of gas fees to put that in the blockchain. But other than that, you can easily say, yes, this was owned by Fernando, and Fernando was the author. And then as long as it's patent, and you can see that chain of custody on the blockchain publicly, you can imagine, I keep saying buying property, it's always a pain of all the documents and lawyers that you have to get involved. But if you have an NFT that sort of says, this is a house, there was a builder, and this is the government giving the builder permission, and then the builder gives you the NFT, and then you keep a chain of custody of who owns the house. And that allows interconnection automatically in a decentralized way. By that, I mean, if you are an insurance company, right now, insurance companies, if they want to automate the process of a quote for a property, some are connected to some cities. So major metropolitan areas, probably insurance companies are already connected to it to get information about the property, right? But if not, then they have to assess it manually, or they have to just connect to every single different municipality. If you have something on the blockchain with the characteristics of the property embedded in that, then it's just like a simple API call, a simple call that anybody can make and say, okay, yeah, this house is this big and it was built with these materials on this date. So making that data accessible to third parties is very important. And where I've seen this going is, so for example, back to the example of your own data, like if you put your data on the blockchain with a smart contract wrapped around it, you can control who sees it. So for example, you put in, I don't know, your healthcare information in there. And then when you go to a doctor, you give permission to the doctor to see that information. And then you switch doctors, all you have to do is remove access to that doctor and give it to a new doctor. Or I don't know, again, back to the insurance example, you want to get a life insurance quote, give access to the insurance company, they'll review your data and give you a quote, right? So.
Do you ever foresee that if that doesn't become the case and people don't find a way to take control of their own personal data, that there'll be a situation where you have, you have a guy, you have Paul or Fernando, Friday night, orders a pizza, and then and then the insurance company calls up and says, "Hey, whoa, we noticed from your transactions here, you ordered a pizza. You're at this kind of weight. Your cholesterol's not looking too good. Maybe you need to cancel that order. Oh, don't worry, we cancelled it for you. By the way, we signed you up to a gym." Like, do you think we're going down that kind of path?
I mean, we could, but that's why it's important to keep the control back to the person who owns the data. Because right now what's happening is once you give that information to an insurance company, it's the insurance company who owns it and you cannot withdraw it, right?
Yeah.
I've gotten insurance quotes before for my life insurance. They already have the data. There's no way for me to say, give me that data back. But if I'm the one who controls it, then I'm the one who decides if I want, whoever wants it, to look at that data, right? Because that's what's going to be key. If I want my insurance company to know what I'm ordering for takeout, that's my decision. Maybe because they're going to offer me a better rate or not, right? But decentralizing means taking back control for each individual, right?
So, like, there's a quote that says, if you are using a service such as like an online social media and it's free, then you are the product.
Yes.
And that has been the case for, pretty much since 2004, but we've only sort of realized it in the past sort of like 7 or 8 years, that all of us are creating an enormous digital footprint of data of when we log on, where we are, GPS data, shopping data, who we're with. And that has been used by advertisers and marketing companies and social media platforms to build a digital picture of us, a footprint that can be sold. If we take back control, they will have the old data, but we take control of our data from, like, say we manage to take control of it from tomorrow. They no longer have that permission, and say we cancel our accounts, we close them down, and then any future accounts that we sign up for, we have to give them whatever they need via the blockchain. That makes us incredibly valuable and powerful, doesn't it, if we take back control?
Absolutely, yeah. And I think that's why the whole Web 3.0 movement is about. It's about you are the contributor and the controller of the space that you're building together, right?
Yeah.
Because before, like, let's say that Facebook, as an example, goes fully into Web 3.0, then you are the one who's going to control what Facebook uses or sees, right? And then you can even set up prices, right? Like maybe because it all can be done with a smart contract. You can say to Facebook, I'm going to charge you if you want to know my location today, right? And then they will have to pay you with tokens. That's all possible.
I like the sound of that. That's quite a good quite a good proposition. So yeah, if you wanted to, if they were that desperate to know where you were up to, and then you could set a price and you get that back in cryptocurrency or something, that starts to sound quite good.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's a proposition because, for example, if you look at customer acquisition costs nowadays online, it's quite high, especially for financial services. So if financial services are expending, let's say, insurance, from what I understand, I'm not an expert in marketing, it's a couple $100, right, to acquire one customer. And you have to go, and that's just the customer acquisition cost. There's additional costs that go around that in the marketing department of a big company to just set up a strategy to acquire the customers. But if you just say, okay, well, I'm just going to go to the blockchain and I'm going to say, I'm going to pay this much if people are willing to provide me with their location or their age, and then maybe it's less than $200, and maybe you pay $50, and people are opt in, and then you reduce your customer acquisition costs. So I do think it's valuable for both sides of the trade.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, because you don't want to, you wouldn't want to make it. You wouldn't want to make the data that you've got unsaleable to the point where they just look elsewhere or go to a different market, or just to abandon people who are in that position where they can control their data. Because I think won't that ability depend? It'll depend on people's knowledge, but also where they live and the technology that they have available.
Absolutely, and that's why it's important to, for the Web 3.0 space to be developed to the point where tools are easy to use. People compare Web 3.0 with, the birth of the internet, where, I met a guy a few years ago who was a client of mine. He started his career and he made his money, his fortune, building HTML websites in the 90s, and he was charging, $40,000 per website.
Yeah.
Because very few people knew how to do it, and there was a demand. I think that's what started to happen right now with Web 3.0, all the blockchain related services. And eventually they're going to be super easy to use, like using any app. And some already are.
Yeah.
And that's going to allow people that are not technical to do this, to say, here's my data, here's the prices, here's who can access it.
And have you heard of Beeple? Do you know who Beeple is? Yeah.
Yes, he sold a $69 million NFT.
That's insane. Yeah, I was going to say, so he is almost like the equivalent of that chap who was selling those websites for $40,000 a piece. Even more so. Because it was the first 10,000 days worth of designs. It just insane, 69 million. I mean, who actually paid for that? That's what I'd like to know.
Well, there's a lot of people with money in this world, and when the interest rates are so low, it's hard to park that much cash. So you search for places where to put it, right? And art has always been a place, an asset class to put that. So
yeah. So so we're here. I think we're off to a great start. So did you have anything in particular that you would like to talk about, or that you want to we're off to a cool start with NFTs and databases and stuff like that? But
yeah, so in the case of NFTs, now that we're in the subject, I started creating NFTs as a fun project. Actually, the discussion started with a friend of mine who's a designer. I kept joking that, because the whole idea of designers or so artists, I don't still know the distinctions. I joked with her and said, if you're a designer, you're not an artist because you're not charging for your art, right? Even though she's making art for clients, right? So that idea came after I'd read about another. Oh, it was the sale of the first text message ever sent in the world as an NFT. Can't remember how much it sold for, but it was thousands. So I said, this is a good idea because right now NFTs, or maybe up to last year, NFTs were toys, right? Or like games that people use NFTs for, crypto kitties and all that. So I thought that, again, as explained before, NFTs to me has a real world application. So I wanted to do something that was closer to that. So I didn't want to go with the game stuff. And after seeing, people and all those other NFTs that were not game related, I said, I'm just going to create something. But I am a really bad artist. Like, I have zero art skills, zero. So I didn't know what to do. But then I said, well, I can do AI applications. Why don't I create a simple AI to just do some random painting, maybe abstract painting?
Yeah.
So I mentioned to my friend, who didn't like the idea because apparently that offended her, because
Okay.
artists and abstract and feelings, I don't know, and apologies for the artists that are listening. But I said, you know what, I'm going to do it. And I did it. So I created this bot that I call Bot Dali, because, again, I'm not a big art guy, but I do like Salvador Dali.
Very nice. I recently, sort of end of last year, I had like a Dali mustache going on. It's very good.
So I created this and sent it out to my friends and contacts, and I ended up selling one piece. And then I just kept going, and I have some new ideas. And so I'm sort of positioning like a project that is an NFT created by AI.
Yeah.
Which sort of gives it a nice ring to it. But at the end of the day, what I want to highlight is that NFTs are beyond what we see today, right? A lot of the NFT crowd are looking for NFT drops and crypto kitties or apes. And I mean, I guess everything has to get started somehow, but to me, that's just one small application of how NFTs should be used.
So what other applications do you foresee for an NFT? Could an NFT be a podcast, for example? It could be, couldn't it?
Yeah, I mean, the good thing about NFTs, for those who are listening and are not familiar with it, is that you can set your own royalties, right? So once it trades, it's a smart contract, so it automatically sends the royalties back to you, which you are eliminating the lawyers and all that, which is great. So that's why I said a smart contract in the decentralized finance and an NFT together could be very powerful. I have this idea of, like you said, you don't know who bought Beeple's art, who paid 69 million.
Yeah.
Must be a rich guy, right?
Yeah, very rich.
So I think that maybe from a marketing perspective, we can create an NFT that's very expensive, but the idea is not to have art, is to authenticate rich people for a luxury brand. So imagine if you're one of the, LVMH, selling Gucci, what is it? This tells you how bad I am with fashion. Is it Louis Vuitton? I think it is. Anyway, one of those big brands who wants to go after one of those clients. How do they identify it, right? So acquiring customers at that level is also very expensive because it's a very high ticket item. It could also even lead you to an identification of like KYC, so know your customer regulations. As you know, banks, they have the burden of making sure the people that are banking with them are not, money laundering, drug lords or whatever.
Yeah.
So if somebody can use an NFT, or like a bank produce an NFT, just to prove that that person has passed all the checks, then that could be like its own thing, right? Because then I'm already checked, right? It's like the additional security.
Yeah, there's recently I was signing up for like a government gateway thing. I was checking my tax or something, and it said that I could verify my identity using an application on my phone, where basically I just validate myself once with this thing, and then I don't have any need for passwords anymore, and it generates a QR code, and then I just scan that QR code or just authenticate with my thumbprint, and it just lets me pass all of the security. So there's no more selecting letters and numbers from a drop down or inputting a password or a username. I just go to the website and then log in once with this application. And I think that's, again, that took a while to set up, but perhaps that's a similar sort of approach or application that you could do if you could generate the NFTs automatically and have somebody sign into an app or something and verify who they are. Then do you see it working like that? Or
yeah, no, absolutely, because the problem with what you're describing is you don't control the data, right?
Yeah,
it's the government, which we have to trust that they're doing their thing and they're keeping the data secure, but
yeah,
they also become a target by other foreign governments or big hacking groups to try to get that data, right? So the advantage of Web 3.0 and blockchain is that you are the one who's in control, and it's global, right? Because I'm in Canada, and if I want to interact with you and I want to verify who you are, I don't have a way because that's UK based.
Yeah.
With
Yeah.
blockchain, it's fully global. So that's why I think maybe if a brand wants to identify people in their segment, like putting the very rich people as an example, right? Then you easily can identify them and market to them, right? Whoever holds this, or as you said, identity verification and proof for people who have passed different regulations, right? Sort of a more global standard. Because me moving a lot, what I've seen in the world right now is that everybody has a different way of doing things.
Yeah.
And it's like every time you move, you have to do things all over again, right? And in particular, the banking system after September 11, 2001 became really annoying to work with because of all the regulations that were put on top of the KWC regulations already in place. So I can tell you, like going to Finland, it's going to be a pain because I'm opening a bank account. It's going to be like I'm just reborn into the world again, right? Because none of what I already have here in Canada can be validated.
Yeah, that's a bit of a pain. So if the person or the billionaire had the NFT, or the average person had the NFT where they could validate who they were, and it all worked on the blockchain, how would that work? What would that look like? Would you have a password that links to the data that's on the blockchain, or
Yeah, well, so it's like a wallet, right? So all you have to do is log into your wallet and show that you're the owner of the NFT. So that could work in different ways. Like, so for example, if you're a wealthy person, it's a different story. But let's say you're a company, right? And you want to host an event in a different place, or maybe transact international with goods. Right now, it requires letters of credit, insurance. But if you can just say, I verify that I have the money, here's proof, then it's a different story, right? Because I've been in situations where, like, for example, if you go to a hotel, you have to prepay if it's too much, because it's like they don't want to take the risk unless you're already a known person, or you work for a large company that already has a credit line or a credit history with them, right? But if you have that, you can even, with the smart contracts, you can even, by just showing the QR code, or you're proving that you are the owner of the NFT, you can trigger a smart contract to then withdraw from your wallet some portion of the funds and send it straight to them, just to have some down payment of an unknown credit amount, right?
Or it could, like just confirm that you have that, or in excess of the amount of the bill.
Correct. Yeah. And that could be integrated to like your own bank accounts, because that's another thing. Like, so for example, if you go to a new country and you want to establish credit, and you don't have a credit history, you have to prove that you have income, right?
Yeah.
So if you're in the UK, they are familiar with the UK banks and the statements. But if I send them Canadian bank statements, they're going to question that a bit, right? So how can I validate that? There's right now not a easy system to integrate that automatically. If I have an NFT that can connect to everything and says, I'm the owner of all these assets, right? And here's the total balance, and then that automatically verifies things and puts them at ease, right?
On the flip side of that, if if for example you had a bad credit rating and you were like bankrupt or whatever, and then you moved and you wanted to start fresh, you couldn't do that if all of the systems were blockchain based.
Correct, but that's the blockchain is just a system. Like, you are the one who grants access to them, so you don't have to do it, right?
Yeah.
If you want to do it, you do it. If you don't, then you have to start from scratch, right? You have to do it the way we currently do it.
Okay. Yeah.
Because it's the same thing. Like, the people who don't like to have debt, they don't have a credit score. If they're going to get a mortgage, there's a lot of mortgage companies that wouldn't underwrite the mortgage because they use a lot of automated systems that integrate to Equifax and TransUnion and all the credit providers. They have to do it manually, and so not all companies want to do it manually. So it's the same thing, right?
Okay. Yeah, I didn't know that it was possible to get a mortgage without going through those credit file companies.
Well, the reason is it's easier, right? Which is what I'm alluding to. Credit providers have the data, and the bank can connect to it and get your history and make a determination if you're worthy of the loan or not. The problem with that is the credit company controls, the credit reporting agency controls the data.
Yeah,
And there have been cases where it's wrong, right?
Yeah, and they also they control your destiny in a way. You know, you might want like a simple transaction, and it could be that unbeknownst to you, you're a victim of fraud, and you know, you've got a bad like a bad streak, or you know, connected to your name, and like you say, that could be incorrect, and then you know, it would take a hell of a long time to sort that out and rectify that.
Yeah. So if you control the data, you don't want to show it, then the company you're dealing with will have a procedure. Like I said before, today it's possible to get a mortgage without a credit score. It's just more difficult because, again, most companies that are the originator of loans, they're just originators. They don't keep the loan. So to reduce costs and increase their profit on the commission that they get for the loan generation, they automate everything. And part of the automation process is what's your credit score, what's your credit history. But there are banks that will go ahead and, you know, request your documents and do the process manually. They're probably more expensive, and it takes longer, right? But you can still do it.
Yeah. So getting back to the NFTs and the AI that was generating them, what did they look like when it was generating these? I'm going to say pieces of art. That's why I'm going to say it. Like, yeah, definitely. These are, you know, artificially, you know, computer generated pieces of art. Sorry, artists.
That's what I think too. But I mean, it's good to disagree. I don't sort of say that they're wrong in the artist's point of view, because artists are artists do a very personal job, right? Of getting sitting in front of the paint and doing it, right? So
but also like the definition of art is not set. Like it's individual to each person. So you know, that's the other thing that you can argue, that you can fight for as well. But
yeah, for sure. So I think it's and I love this type of projects. I love things that are sort of converging ideas and dichotomies. And I think this is a good expression of that. It's like, is it real art? I think it is, because, I mean, I'm not the one creating the art. It's a bot. And do bots have feelings? No, but also a person looking at art, even if it's humanly created, might have a different interpretation of what that means, right? And I'm sure we can look at abstract art from any famous artist, you and me, and we both agree on something different, or say or believe something different.
Or like see something totally different in the exact same painting, or piece, or whatever it is. So
and I've gone through it. Like, I sometimes look at the paintings that the bot creates, and it's like, hey, I hadn't seen that before, right? And I think that's interesting. So I do think it's art. It's maybe the new way of doing art.
And what kind of what do they look like? Are they characters, or are they abstracts?
No, so I'm trying to be as abstract as possible for a reason. And that is, I want that, because I want people to think, hey, I think this is this, and somebody else to think, oh no, it's totally different. There's also, this is a fun side project, so the more realistic you go, the harder it is to do this in terms of coding. So it's easier, you know, quote unquote, to have it more abstract. And what they look like, I sort of like, for some weird reason, the grid pattern. So that's my decision. So most of these painters, you're going to see like a grid. And within each square, there's some sort of abstract. And then when you put it all together, it looks, you might say, it looks like a face.
Like a mosaic or something that becomes a face.
And some are completely abstract. It's just like random shapes and colors, right? What I'm planning on doing right now is I'm planning on going with video, because that's a beautiful thing about NFT, right? That's a mode of art. Before you couldn't do art that moves, right? With NFTs you could. So I'm planning on doing something cool with videos, but I just need to find the time.
Or even like a 3D generated abstract something. Maybe you could link it to AR, augmented reality, and once that person owns that NFT, they can do something with it. Like maybe it's almost like an interactive wallpaper for their phone, and then when they activate it, if they touch it, it turns the camera on, and then it interacts with like objects on their desk or something like that. You could do something weird.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the possibilities are limitless when it comes to art and NFT. Because it's a new way of doing things.
And when it comes to computers as well, like when you link those things together, it's very, very exciting. Like
I said, like if you can do like a digital file as an NFT, like I said, the first text message ever sent. You couldn't do that before. And for me, if I work companies, like, I'm also a big car guy, as mentioned, love Formula One and motor racing. But like, if I own the blueprints or the digital blueprints for a famous car, I would sell that as an NFT. I mean, it would be quite pricey because there's a lot of collectors in this space, right? Maybe NASA can raise some money by selling some blueprints, digital blueprints on some of their, modules and spaceships that they've launched.
Yeah, or like perhaps the sort of the structure or chemical composition of like a moon rock or something, and have that digitally created and sell that as an NFT to a fan of space.
Yeah, and like you said, podcasts could be NFTs, so voice, sounds, anything could go. So I think that's the beauty of it. It's limitless. It sort of expands on what art could be, because right now art had to be basically standing still unless you were a movie, but it's a different story. But yeah, so I think it's endless the possibilities you can have, and also it's tying into the metaverse as well, right? So digital art blends very well with the metaverse. And the other thing that you could do with NFTs and blockchain and distributed applications is that, again, you have control. I was recently invited to participate in a digital art incubator, and how their positioning is they're going to raise money by selling the NFTs. So this is an artist who created an incubator, and this artist is creating NFTs. And if you buy the NFT, then you're going to have a say on what art is displayed in their galleries in the metaverse, and what artists you want to recognize and give them an opportunity to do. So all of that wasn't really possible before with an art gallery, for example. Like if you buy a painting from an art gallery, you didn't have that power over the decision on how you wanted the project to go.
So the metaverse is like in its infancy right now, but I'm starting to see things come through on LinkedIn. Like there are companies that are adopting metaverse for communication within their companies, and there's the ability to create avatars based on your like profile picture. I'm not sure of like the timeline of when Meta or the metaverse is just gonna become available to everybody, and when Facebook makes that transition. But what do you foresee being the sort of, not the future, but like the next sort of 5 to 10 years of the metaverse? Do you think people will take it on board and start earning a living from creating digital assets and being able to sell them? I know that happens a little bit now, but
yeah, well, it's funny because Second Life was created at the end of the 90s.
Yeah,
and that's the same concept, and it grew, and there's still a couple million people still using that. So I think there's definitely demographics for it. Now, would it be mainly adopted? Perhaps. One thing that is funny that back in the late 90s, actually, I had this idea of, why do we have e-commerce? Because I love shopping online because I don't have to go out and, hustle and bustle with the crowd and the mall and all that. I love that. But so, for example, back in the 90s, when this started to come up, my mom would say, she didn't like it, and she still doesn't really like it because she wanted to go out. So I always said, why don't we have a virtual mall? Like if you create a virtual mall and people can have avatars and stroll through and they have that social component and the social interaction, and real brands get on board, you can think about, in London, what's the famous store there? Very expensive. Harrods.
Yeah.
Like people go to Harrods because it's cool or expensive, and maybe you don't buy anything because it's really expensive, but it's a nice animal first, right? So if you could replicate that in the real world where people do window shopping, they don't necessarily go there to buy, but you get a social interaction with others. That's the very important aspect of the metaverse, is that you can do things that you can do now, but with a community component that's more real time, right? Because you can have that. I know teenagers don't do this anymore, but when I was a teenager, we meet at the mall, or we used to meet at the mall.
Yeah.
You could do now that in the metaverse. So I do think that there's an interesting component there to sort of merge real world and virtual world. However, would the people make money? As a frustrated economist, because I always love economics, but I never thought that you could make money with it. But I love the free economic guys, for example. I don't know if you've read those books. As a frustrated economist, I always say that history repeats itself, and the economy of scale is always going to win. So what's eventually going to happen is people are going to make money, but eventually a few firms will control the destiny, and a few firms will be making stuff on the metaverse. So because it's in its infancy, you can probably exploit it and make a lot of money. And I don't see the metaverse replacing 100% our lives, but it will definitely be an important part of it.
Yeah, especially I think if the metaverse was further down the road when 2020 happened and people around the world were all getting locked down, and then they had more time and they were thinking, reevaluating their life. If the metaverse was like, say, 5 years further down the road, but in 2020, then I think that would have been the perfect time. And having everybody inside, they would have probably swarmed to it. So yeah, I can see where the idea has come from. Obviously, Second Life and then Ready Player One's big influence as well. But PlayStation also had a very similar idea. I think even 8 years ago or more, and it was called PlayStation Home. And it never really took off. It was kind of like Second Life, but the graphics within the system were of a much higher resolution, and you could go into the cinema. There'd be like a town square, and you could go into the cinema and check out movie trailers or game trailers, and there was little arcade machines, and you could go and play like little mini games, or you could just chat with people in there that you just met. You also had an apartment and you could furnish it. And in my mind, that's what I kind of feel like the metaverse will be like, but in like a virtual reality or augmented reality way.
Well, the difference is you need the network effect, and for it to take off, we need brands in there, right? So we need the Apples of the world, we need the Adidas, the Nikes of the world to be part of it, so you can interact socially with other people, but at the same time purchase things in real life, right? Because right now, if I want a pair of sneakers, I might go onto Amazon or order straight from the manufacturer, but that's a quick, easy transaction. If I go to the metaverse just for the sake of socializing, then it's less of an attractive proposition for me. That if you tell me you're gonna socialize and also get your shopping done and the stuff that you need to do, because maybe, as you say, maybe the tax office is going to be in the metaverse, and then you can socialize it, go to the tax office, pay your taxes and all that. So you need a network effect. You need brands, big players in the real world to jump onto the metaverse for it to take over.
Yeah. For it to have any sort of value, really. Yeah. Fascinating. I recently I've been designing some pieces of artwork to sell as NFTs myself. And I've been focusing on controversial figures in history because I thought.
I thought about that, but again, I can't paint. I can do anything digitally. Okay. But yeah, that's a fascinating.
I'll have to show you these. I'll send you like PNG versions or whatever, and you can have a look at them.
Because I thought about having like the good and the bad, right?
Yeah.
What people in general thought were good leaders and like dictators and stuff like that.
Yeah, stuff like that. Yeah. Yeah, I know, and the thing is, like, I really enjoy. I'd heard that people had implemented these AI, bots to create these things, like the chimps or whatever. I can't remember what they're called. Are they?
Yeah,
like,
or apes, I think.
Yeah, those apes. I heard that they're generated by AI, so you put like a whole load of assets together, and then it just makes a random set of the apes. But I know it's a lot slower, but I prefer painting them myself in Photoshop, and I just use loads of different layers and color them in, and I'll send you over some stuff and you can have a look.
Yeah, there is a very famous NFT creator who is doing that with I forget remember his name. He's doing like Wall Street bulls. I think it's called.
Yeah,
and he takes caricature versions of the Wall Street bull and paints different things on top of like layers. So there's thousands of them, and they change like every day depending on the events of the day, right?
Yeah.
He will like put a mask on the bull for like COVID, and for Boris Johnson, you probably do like a week with a party or something like that. So no, I think that's fascinating because it's a contemporary art. It goes with the history, and then you can be very controversial about it. Like I was talking to my friend about this idea of having like good people in history, bad people in history, and you can be very controversial, right? Like you can say Monica Lewinsky was a good one and Bill Clinton was a bad one, stuff like that, right? So just to create buzz and get the eyeballs looking at your art.
I think it would also be interesting to see how far people are willing to go. Like, would they make a Jeffrey Epstein NFT, you know, and who would buy that? Like, and would you get in trouble like for doing something like that, you know, or you know, some like real horrible character from history? I mean, who's gonna make like a Hitler NFT, you know? Like, and
that's the dark side. Is like it's not so much making it, because I do believe that art is expression, and you should be able to do whatever you want to do.
Yeah,
there's definitely some horrible things I've seen that's been passed as art that I don't agree with, but that's the whole point. It's more like when you're profiting for it, because if you make a Hitler NFT and then you're charging money and some crazy neo-Nazi pays you for it, I would feel terrible about it, right?
It's one of the characters that I was drawing. I'm not going to say who it is because we're going to put this up, but I'll tell you afterwards. And one of my colleagues said, "It's becoming an obsession." This, she said. And I said, "No, it's not." She's like, "I'm worried about you." I said, "You don't have to worry. You know, it's just a bit of fun." And she said, "No, but the dark side, it has a way of getting hold of you." And I said, "I'm okay. Like, I'm all right. It's I'll tell you who this character is later."
But for example, like if you make a Trump one, I know people would pay tons of money for it.
Yeah.
Would that be right or not or wrong? I don't know, but
I don't know if he still controversial. Like he is, isn't he? But at the same time, it's sort of you know, I don't know if this is the algorithms doing a trick on me or not. I'm not really seeing anything negative about him, and that makes me worried that like I've accidentally slipped into.
You're going over to the dark side.
Yeah, that I'm like gone over to the right side. You know, you know.
No, I mean, I think the good thing is like I wouldn't compare Trump to like somebody like Hitler. I mean, Trump is a very controversial and polarizing figure. But I mean, he hasn't killed anybody, at least. There's some crazy people that have killed on his name, but that doesn't make him guilty of it. So, but I do like to be edgy and controversial. As I said before, I like topics, themes that get people to talk about it, right? So that's why I love that idea. Again, I don't know how to use Photoshop or Paint or do anything like that. That's why I didn't take on that. But I was telling my designer friend, like maybe she should do it. So
I think it'd be a good idea. Did you happen to hear? I think it was maybe last year or maybe the year before that an artist took a banana and took it into a gallery and taped it on the wall, and then I think they pay like £50,000 or dollars for it, and then maybe a couple of days later or a week later, some other guy went in and he just ripped the banana off the wall and he ate it. And then he, you know, after he got in trouble, he was like, "This is my performance piece," you know.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love what Banksy did in that auction. Like he shredded
the yeah.
That was amazing. There was another one that I read about last summer when I was traveling. This gallery commissioned this artist to create a painting. And they wanted to be a painting about greed and money. So the artist asked them, you know, to send him $84,000 in cash. And then he delivered the painting at the end. And when they opened the box, it was a blank canvas. So I think this is genius. I mean, he's greedy. The painting was about greed. They sent him the money. Here's your painting.
Yeah, I did catch that.
Yeah.
Did they wanted that money back, didn't they?
They did, and I think they sued the guy. This isn't the States, of course, where everybody sues everybody. But do they have a case? I don't think they do.
I don't know. Like, perhaps he completed his side of the contract. You know, so yeah.
How you define art? Like they didn't say you have to take the bills and cut them and paint them on top or paste them on top. They didn't say that. They just said, "Here's the money. Do something about greed." There you go.
I mean, it's extraordinary the fact that they gave that to him, you know, and he could have done anything with it, and then he did, and then they weren't happy with what he did.
Exactly, right. So it's like he fulfilled his contract.
Yeah,
but I love that type of art. So
yeah, I like I like Banksy. I think, I'd like to know who he is. I don't know why I want to know, because even if I find out who he is, it's like it's not going to change my life or anything. It's just, oh yeah, that's the guy. But
I think it's a group of people, to be honest, and I'm surprised that they haven't jumped into the NFT side. Maybe because they're afraid that somebody will trace their wallet address or something. But yeah, I love Banksy. I think it's very controversial, and what he does is spot on in terms of keeping current with events.
You always see imitators everywhere. So where I used to live up north, they have these sort of rubber bollards that are white, and they have like reflectors, and sometimes they have those in islands in the middle of the road, and they're near traffic lights as well. So when you're in a queue of traffic and you're waiting, I used to see this one. It was quite familiar. It was a Mr. T. Do you know Mr. T from the A-Team? And it was like in the style of a Banksy, like a spray painting. And then a little bit further, there'd be like a John Lennon, or they were all over that town where I used to live. Yeah, very very cool. I can't wait to send you these NFTs that I've done and see what you think.
Sure, happy to.
So, how are you doing for time? I know we've done an hour.
I'm good.
Yeah. So, what else do you want to cover? What are you doing next with NFTs or your career? I mean, when are you moving to Finland as well? That's with
COVID, who knows? But I'm targeting a month or so from now.
Yeah.
In terms of what I'm doing with NFTs, I said I want to do some more video. I have an idea there that I'm cooking, still not fully formed. But what I've come to realize is that NFT is a good bridge between what I do in terms of data and art. And I've never considered myself an artist, and now people are looking at me like an artist. I'm like a little bit scared because I suck at art. But it gives me an excuse, at least, to to be a little bit of an imposter and mix with other people who are artists. And I wonder, what else can we create with that? So that's why I'm engaging this friend of mine who's a designer.
Yeah.
I don't expect me to live out of my or off the NFT income. Yeah. But what I do want to do is, how can we use this technology to improve it? So that's that invitation that I got to be part of the incubator. I thought it was a great idea, because with a little bit of money that I contribute, I can help other artists, right? Now, who knows who we might discover. It also sort of intertwines with another sort of branch of my career. For a time, I was building rigs to mine cryptocurrencies. This was years ago. I think it was like the second bubble. Made a ton of money doing that. There was a lot of demand, and then it crashed, right? And then people lost interest. So I said, this is a lot of work. It's a lot of work to build those rigs. And then I was consulting with people that wanted to set up their own mines. And I love that space. Like, it's so new. So this is me going back to it. And as I said, like, let's push the boundaries. I have relationships with a lot of VC funds that are now jumping to the space. So I have visibility on what people are doing. So I love learning. So I just want to like absorb everything.
Yeah, me too. And it's working in technology, or on the edge of it as a lecturer. I don't get a lot of opportunity to dive in and do something with the tech. So I'm always reading about the tech and trying to keep up to date and trying to pass that knowledge on in interesting ways. But every now and then, I find something that hits that sweet spot. I think the same with you, where I'm hitting that creative urge that's inside, where it might be the podcast series that I'm doing, or it might be these NFTs that I've just started. And for me, that's really rewarding. And I think that'd be a nice way to retire, like to do something like that, just to meet people, do podcasts, do NFTs, maybe even make NFTs out of the podcasts, and see where that goes as well.
Yeah, and you hit on another thing that I love to do, which is podcasting. I haven't created yet my series, but I'd like to create a series where I sort of sit with the two sides of the venture capital aspect of a business. Maybe bring in some of my connections in the VC world with founders trying to scale their business, to give a perspective of what it actually is, because people have this idea that everybody's, like the Facebooks of the world, that you get 3 billion thrown at you. It doesn't happen that way. I've been exposed to it long enough. and it's a grueling, grinding process, but it's a very fulfilling one. And I like to educate people about it through a podcast and sort of like, get us. My goal would be, my dream would be like one of the Sequoia partners on the podcast with founders, like the knowledge that they can get out of it and the exposure of their companies that they can give is impressive. And I want to do that. I still promise I don't have time. I do so much in my day. And part of me going to Finland is like to quiet down, calm down a bit.
Yeah, to focus a little bit. Have you got children?
I do. I have two babies, 5 and 3.
Oh wow. Okay. Yeah. So you must be incredibly busy as well.
Yes. Yeah. And it's taking a toll. Like I don't think I'm busy because I love it. Time flies. But I do see my kids now that they're getting bigger and older that they want time with me, right? So it's before I didn't care. Like I could work until 2 in the morning, whatever, right? But my kids are demanding time. So that's what my plan to move to Finland, where they're huge on work-life balance and try to like focus a bit. And they have a great ecosystem for startups as well, so I can do whatever.
Yeah, and also their school system is, the reputation is that they have the best schools in the whole world as well. And the children, they start a little bit later there to enable them to have a childhood and get out there and learn different skills like woodsman style skills and camping and starting fires and things that like they're intrinsic to who we are as people, like being out there in nature. And when particularly in the UK, you don't have any real opportunity to go and experience that if if you're working 37 hours a week and you've got a family. And it's just for sure.
And one thing about that education system that I love, my son was in that education system for the 3 months we spent in Finland last year. He did marvelous. Like he was affected through the pandemic because they're no socializing, right? And that's a very important skill to sort of get at that stage of their life. So it was wonderful for him, but impressive 2 things. Kids walk to school on their own, 7, 8 years old, doesn't matter. People just like, hey, here are the keys, go to school.
Yeah.
So in the mornings I was walking out, I was seeing like all these kids, 6, 7, 8 years old, like walking on the street. And it's like, what's happening? And the other thing that surprised me is, as you said, they focus on teaching like real valuable life skills. We took a trip to a national forest outside of Helsinki. It was a group of people with our kids. I'm a nerd. I only spend my life with computers. I know nothing about nature or surviving or anything like that. And then we were in a group, and this Finnish kid who was 5 years old. And I noticed out of the corner of my eye, she bends down, picks up, a leaf, and she eats it. And she picks another one and gives it to her mother. And then I'm like looking at them, and I asked the mother, "It's like, is that edible?" And the kid says, "Yes, it's edible." Like they know what to eat in the forest. So I looked at her mother and I said, "Okay, if we get lost, I'm following your daughter."
Yeah, for sure. Like I mean, I often think about that. Like, or I used to think, could I survive? Like, if I just went out into the wilderness, if I got completely sick of like city and town life, could I find a cave somewhere and just get out there and survive? And yeah, probably not. But maybe if I had a Finnish kid with me, I'd be okay.
Yeah, but I think that's it's an interesting way of raising kids, and they put a lot of emphasis in raising kids. Families like the trains have a car that is specifically for kids with a playground in it.
Oh wow!
So I thought that was great for families. So I want my kids to experience that, and that's why part of the decision of me going there.
You're selling it to me. I might join you.
For sure, that they are. I'm not an ambassador to them because the program was very interesting. It had a lot of attention globally because during the pandemic, people wanted to move, and they are doing it again. I think they already selected the people that are going to be, or they're selecting the people for the next cohort. Yeah. It was a wonderful experience, and again, you meet with all these interesting VCs, startup founders. You get like a curated experience. Plus the other people that you're with are, in this particular program, CEOs and investors. So it was a wonderful experience, and you get to learn a lot about things that you don't hear about, because I think Finland, it's lacking in their promotional material. Like you don't hear about Finland outside of Finland, but it was great. So I encourage people to travel. It might not be for everybody, but if you want to try it, go ahead and do it. I think, well, now the UK is no longer part of Europe, unfortunately. But if you're in Europe, travel. It's easy.
Yeah, that's actually it started to bite a little bit. It started to become irritating. I mean, it was already, as soon as it became a question, it started to divide people and pit people against one another. And I was on the, I'm pro Europe. I want to be part of Europe and want to be, remain in Europe. And yeah, there's reasons for being out of Europe, and there's reasons for being in. I can see both sides of the argument. But I did a lot of work in Europe before the question came up. So I spent a lot of time traveling around Germany, France, and the Netherlands and Denmark and stuff. And for me, it just felt like over there on the continent, they're one big community. It's no problem going from one country to the next, and you can dive in and out of all these different cultures and different foods, and yeah, everywhere's pretty similar, but they're also very different in their different ways, and it felt like the wrong decision, and it really felt like the wrong decision about a couple of weeks ago when I'm doing the Power MBA, and they had a European beer taster night. So on the list of countries of people who could participate, you pay like 30 quid and they send you a crate of beer, and then you can be on the webcam and enjoy this beer tasting. I was not on there. The United Kingdom was like, nope, sorry, your laws are screwy, and the import won't allow it. And then also I tried to send some sweets, some like chocolate and candies and stuff to my friend in Germany recently, a couple of weeks ago. I think it was his I can't remember why, but I think it was his kid's birthday or something, and I wasn't allowed to send any of this confectionery, and I was like, what? Like, that's never been a problem before, like, to do that. And it's starting to become really irritating.
Yeah, I mean, my personal opinion is that no country can sustain itself in today's world. It's regressionary to think that way, because we have a globalized economy. And I've been for 5 years working remotely, and I've worked for companies from the US to India and everything in between. And I can do it remotely because my profession allows it. But I don't see a problem for other professions to do the same. And I think now, after the pandemic, it's over, people now understand how easy it is to work remotely. Yeah. And that's finally going to open up the last door to globalization, which is the free movement of labor. Because yes, you're in the UK, but if you can work remotely, there's no reason why you should work for a German company or Spanish company, right? So I think that's coming. And unfortunately, there's a lot of populism in this world. And politics is a dirty business, in my opinion. I don't think there's a good politician out there. And this type of, high headlines grabbing policies are very good to them, because that's how they get their name out there, right? And it creates a lot of buzz and noise. I think that's wrong. So, but unfortunately, that's what we have to deal with. And that's why I try to avoid dealing with politicians or looking at what politicians are doing, because it's frustrating, to be honest.
Yeah, they're like a breed unto themselves, aren't they? I mean, I'm sure that there are a lot of good people, decent people who work in politics, but to find them in those top jobs and the decision-making jobs, I think is rare, because of the nature of politics. Yeah. You have to be a certain kind of person to make it. Okay. And it's those characteristics, I don't think that's what we need right now.
No, we don't. And that's also one of the reasons that I like the Scandinavian countries, not just Finland, is that they see politicians as just another guy. Like, you would see the Prime Minister of Finland taking the public transit system and going to the mall with just one bodyguard following a few paces behind. Yeah. And the way they think is like, well, if something happens to her, the next guy comes along and takes the job, right? Yeah. So they don't idolize politicians, which I think is super dangerous. And that's what I always told people about Trump. It was dangerous because he became an idol and a figure people idolize and follow. And I lived through that in Venezuela with Hugo Chavez.
Yeah.
It becomes a mess when that happens, because then it's like the egomaniac comes out and they want to take control of everything, and it's their way or no way. So to me, now North America is heading in that direction, and it's scary.
Are you also sort of feeling that in Canada right now?
We are, because so the scary thing about, in my opinion, what Chavez, Trump came about is because you have no options, right?
Yeah.
And when you don't have decent options on either side, that opens the door to somebody that creates a lot of false noise. And in Canada, we're in that space at the moment. We don't have a good politician or a decent politician that you can say, yeah, I would vote for this guy. He might not be perfect, but whatever, right? We have Justin Trudeau as a leader right now that, in my opinion, he hasn't done much. And although he maintains a good image about what the country should be,
yeah.
But there's not an alternative to him on the other side. We've gone through like 3 or 4 party opposition leaders, like a couple of years. So my fear is that we are one step away from some crazy guy like Hugo Chavez or Trump in Canada to pop up and gather enough support, because people are fed up with the system and there's nothing else to do.
On the internet, like on LinkedIn and Twitter and places like that, there's I get a sense, I get a feeling from what people are posting that they believe that time has already happened and that Trudeau is that guy, especially with the way that he's managed his reaction and policies and emergency powers against the truckers. So he's come across as incredibly forceful and not negotiating, and it's my way or the highway, and they've
But it's a little bit misleading, because in reality, he's not that divisive. He, in my opinion, it's the opposite with him. I don't know if it's because he's too young and he came into power too young, or if it's the way his party is structured. It seems like it takes a long time for his government to make decisions. It's like they want to involve everybody. And as you know, the more people you have, the harder it will be to involve them and make a decision.
Yeah.
So the reason why the truckers did what they did is because it has been 3 weeks before somebody made the decision to do something about it, right?
Yeah.
And that's sort of how he has governed to this point. So I don't think he's that bad. But my point is, there's no other force that you can go for.
Okay. So
and then he will eventually, I think, not be prime minister forever, right? Who else is going to come, right?
Was that a cat that
Oh no! I have this set up a Yeti microphone.
Oh, okay. I thought perhaps a cat had come and like disturbed your webcam.
No, I got this.
Right. Okay. Yeah. No worries. Do you think that an AI or a set of algorithms will ever replace government? Because I've heard, I think maybe I heard it on the Joe Rogan podcast, that is the application of law is very black and white. If you take emotive out of it, or emotion out of it, and you take personality out of it, I mean, if we had a super AI, it could make all of those decisions very quickly. And if we also linked it to the blockchain, and you could have a democracy very, very quickly, where people could use their NFTs to vote for things in real time.
Yeah, well, the Freakonomics books covers it quite well. And I agree 100% with their assessment of how it should be done. The difference with what you're saying is law has what they call, the lawyers call it, spirit of law, which I think is important to consider.
Yeah.
But the government is not the one delivering justice, right? The government's fundamental role is to deploy resources where they're needed, right? Yeah. And that's why a computer is very well suited to do, right? So if you have an AI type of government, and when you go into national level, it might be a little harder, but let's start with the local level. What does the local government do? It's like fit the street, like fit potholes on the street, and lighting and green areas. So why do we have to have a local government if those type of decisions can be made quickly by just objectively looking at the status and the state of all different assets that they're supposed to prioritize? And the computer just decides, okay, there's more traffic on the street, let's fix it, right?
Yeah.
And then, as you said, the votings, it's can be done all online, and many countries are now doing it. Here in Canada, there are municipalities where locally you vote online only. The beauty of that is, if you look at the government structure, the way it is set up in the UK, which is very similar to Canada, and in the States, some similarities as well, is particularly in Canada and the US, big countries back in the 16, 17, 1800s, communication was very difficult. So you needed somebody to represent a far-flung area in the capital. So that's why we have MPs, right?
Yep.
That's not needed anymore. Like Ottawa, in our case, it's not that far from Toronto or BC when it comes to communication, right? Communication travels instantaneously.
Yeah. See, I mean, look at us right now. I'm in the UK, and you're there, and it's instant.
So why do we have MPs going back and forth between the capital and our local region to tell the capital what they think we need?
What they think they think that their community needs. Yeah,
when we can tell
them straight away.
Right. So at that level of national government, you can have an AI government where, as you said, with tokens, NFTs, or whatever, people say, hey, we're having this issue. And then the AI prioritizes the allocation of resources to get that fixed, right?
Yeah, I mean, we need to do this. We could replace all MPs, like in the UK. And save an absolute fortune on their wages as well. Yeah, all those resources could, instead of paying those people's wages and their expenses and second houses and all this sort of stuff, that can go back into the system and go back to helping people and making things more.
Absolutely. But as the free economic guys pointed out in their book, are the incentives aligned? They're not, right?
Yeah.
Because the government, like what I always tell people is, have you ever listened to a parliament meeting where they're voting to increase their salaries?
Yeah.
Those are the only unanimous decisions that ever happen.
Yeah, right? They're always like, yeah.
So
when it comes to increasing minimum wage, the place is empty. There's nobody there to vote.
Right. Yeah. So the incentives, and that's a huge issue, economically speaking, in different aspects of our lives, corporate and government, is that incentives are rarely aligned that well for things to happen, and that's where a lot of friction happens and causes a lot of issues. And government is by nature bureaucratic and wasteful, and the incentive is never there to actually do something about it, right? Like they're not going to vote themselves out of a job. Why would they, right?
It's an interesting point, though. If we took this conversation further, I don't think we should record it.
Yeah, I'm not going to be allowed in the UK.
Yeah, they'll kick me out as well. Yeah, for treason. But
the point is, this conversation should be happening on all levels of government. Not because maybe it's too early, but it's about not being stale. Like legislation by nature is slow, and the world is moving faster than ever. Technology is moving faster than ever. And it's not so much that legislators, MPs do not understand what's happening, because some of them don't, most of them don't, but they can get help to get them up to speed. It's the fact that it takes forever to do anything.
Yeah, right? And to make a decision. Yeah.
And to make decisions. So that's where governments like Estonia, for example, is very good at. Like they're very quick, they're very agile. Finland is also very agile. But that sort of is because they're newer democracies or countries with smaller populations, right? And smaller governments.
I guess China is very agile as well. But then that's on the other side of the spectrum.
But it begs the question, right? What can we do and take from all the different forms of government to be more efficient? Because one thing I can tell you, in Toronto, transit systems is horrible. There was an expansion to one of the lines of the subway. One more station added to the subway was like 3 years late and like $1 billion over budget. And then I went to Taiwan and I was meeting with some people from China, and they were telling me that in Beijing at some point they were building about 20 kilometers of new subway every day.
Yeah.
Right. So, but the reason is it's two polar opposites, right? As you said, in China, it's like there's very little safety regulations, that the government can take over your property. And it's like, we have decided that the line goes over here, and if you have a house or building, that just torn it down and go through it.
Yeah.
Here in Canada is the opposite. Like, it takes decades to go through the process of deciding where the line's going to be.
It's the same here. We have this HS2 line, which is like a high-speed line that's meant to go from London all the way up to Manchester and then across all of the major cities in the north. So I think it's meant to connect Liverpool, Manchester, Leeds, York, and it's billions over budget, and it's before it's even really taken off. And another problem is they when they start digging something up, they'll find like an ancient artifact or some archaeological special interest site, and then that slows it down. Or people's houses might be in the way, and they want to protest that. And fair's fair. Like if somebody's lived in a house for generations or whatever, maybe it should go around or go under or go over or go somewhere else. But yeah, there are definite advantages to having that power where what you say goes, and that's where we've seen that huge expansion and in the economic power of China.
Yeah, so I don't think it's either or. I think there's a good somewhere in the middle, right? And we have to be agile about it. We have to understand that maybe that's not the best solution what China is doing, but we have to see what we can get out of it and what are they doing right that we can copy, right? But this sort of leads back to the point of the incentives, right? In my opinion, we have come to a point where entropy in the legislation or the legislature system it's at its worst point, because after hundreds of years in some cases, politicians are elected to do something, and again the incentive for them is to at least appear that they're doing something, and that translates into let's create more laws and legislation. You've never seen legislation being withdrawn, or rarely you see that.
Yeah.
So what that creates is a mixture of different all new legislation that sometimes conflicts with one another, and then it has to go to court for things to be sorted out, and that's a lengthy, expensive process. So, in some cases, there's what you're saying about taking somebody's house to put a line, it should be looked at for sure, but then you get into situations where like, oh well, this old piece of local law says this and this new says that, and it doesn't go, and then you have to go to court, and then drags in court. It takes years just to clear one house, and then it's like 100 kilometers of line, right? So I think that politicians and government in general should look at how can we be more efficient rather than how can we implement new laws. But again, no politician is going to sit here and say, you know what, I'm going to do less and I'm going to remove laws. It's not a selling point for people to vote.
Yeah. I guess an example of that we have here. But you've been to Spain, many times. Yes. Okay, so when you go to a city over there, they have these little electric scooters, and they have like segways and stuff like that you can go around on in the cities. In this country, they always complain about congestion and traffic and the environment and road safety and all that sort of stuff. Yet those little electric scooters that everybody loves are completely illegal. And to the point where I've been in the park before and I've seen a young guy going down on one, riding it through the park, and a police officer just happened to be there, and he screamed at him like, "You there, boy! Like, get off that and push it home!" Like the kid was terrified, and I was like, "Whoa, does it really deserve that? Like, he's in a park, like I just, it feels so stupid, and it's all because of that there's an old law that counts anything with any sort of engine as a motor vehicle. So, and it's a really old law, like from when motor vehicles were first implemented, and it hasn't been updated. And so there's sort of a way around it where they've in certain nominated towns and cities, the nearest one to here is Norwich, they provide a license to a commercial vendor of those things, and then you can hire them within that area. But if you take it out of that area, it's then again illegal, and it seems odd. Like there's no room for personal use.
And you bring up a good point in terms of green technology. We all want to be greener. But so this business like Elon Musk is in it of putting solar roof tiles on the roof. Yeah,
they look amazing.
Yeah, but it's never going to work here, at least where I am, because the legislation and the local bylaw says that your roof is either metal, asphalt, clay, and that's it. That's what the legislation says. So I want to be greener. I want to have that on my roof.
Yeah.
Right? But then the government says, we want to be green. We want to discourage people from driving and taking public transit. But yet it takes 3 years to add one station, for a price of $5 billion. So it's crazy. Like the legislation is all over the place. The politicians are all over the place. Nothing ever is going to get done. It
is crazy. I have a friend over down in Malaga, and I said to him, I've noticed there's no solar panels on the roofs. And he said, yeah, the government don't allow it. And I was like, you have sun like almost every single day of the year. And he was like, yeah, just not allowed. I was like, that's mad. Like, if there's one place where you could get away with it, you could generate power for everybody for free, essentially. They just don't allow it. That's crazy.
It's crazy. And, things like here in Toronto, at least, or Ontario, is the same. It's like if you manage to put a solar roof panel, it has to be like the traditional one, like the square panel.
Yeah.
You cannot use that electricity. You have to put it back on the grid. And the price that they pay you for that electricity is very low. So people are like, well, it doesn't make any sense for me to spend 30 grand on that. So those are the things like, I don't understand. It should be simple. But then, as you said, the problem is there's all kinds of bylaws and regulation that nobody wants to deal with.
The thing is, like, most of those laws, they probably come in because of lobbyists, who work for the energy industry, who don't want people to be self-sufficient, because then that takes away from their market, their shareholders. So yeah, see, that's the sneaky bit. I don't like that. And if we had an AI, there'd be no way to bribe it.
Correct. Maybe hack it, but
maybe hack it, but you couldn't, you couldn't secretly record the AI, getting a striptease and then blackmail it.
Yeah, so that's why I say it's always, to me, has been a combination of technology and human factors rather than giving it all back to AI, right? So it's like cyborgs rather than bots. So.
Yeah, that was something that I was looking into with my honors degree students recently, last week or the week before. We were looking at in Finland, the rollout of near field communication chips in the palm of their hand, in the fat bit there, and people were using those for entry into their apartments or entry into the office, or paying, like contactless payment just with their hand, stuff like that. What do you think of that technology, tagging, microchipping humans?
I think that's cool. I was there for an event at a co-working space where I was working, where a company came in and gave demonstration and selected 5 people to put them for free. I think that's great. It's like, to me, augmented reality versus VR, right? It's like the metaverse versus something that helps you in your real world, right? Like, I think it's always better, and I think the solution is blended reality, like augmented reality.
Yeah.
And I use it every day. Like in my car, I get the directions displayed through my HUD on the windscreen, so I don't even have to look down at the GPS.
Yeah.
So that stuff helps a lot, right? And you see it with like drones. There's some companies that you do augmented reality for drones. Like if you're mapping your own property, it tells you what's happening. All that stuff is very useful. And I think removing the human factor from that is very dangerous. And that's why I don't believe that AI would be fully AI. Well, at least it won't be a good idea.
Yeah, or I think what a lot of people are worried about is the ability for governments to manipulate that for their own uses. Like say if somebody controversial or wicked did get into power, and you have this chip, this near field communication or implanted, and then you've done something wrong, and then they block your access from using public transport, or they close your account, or they wipe out your NFT or cryptocurrency wallet, or whatever the case may be. And it's if everything that we do is digital, like keys to our house, our cars, how we access buildings, how we purchase food, and how we get paid, then that's open to abuse. No,
I get that, and that's why it has to be done correctly. And part of the Web 3.0 movement of you control that rather than somebody else being able to do it. Because to be fair, it's already happening. Today and yesterday, the government announced here in Canada they're blocking the financial system access to those truckers are protesting or occupying in front of Parliament. So they got all the credit cards canceled, bank accounts freezed. So that's already happening. You don't need a technology for that, right? So I think any technology that you have that you can implant on yourself to help you live your life without somebody else taking control of it, it's great. But I think the ship has sailed in terms of tracking. The government can access our fund records and or fund data.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we always, I say that to my students, that, look, most of you are wearing smartwatches. You've all got mobile phones on you. They know where you are, at all times.
And that's the scary part that a lot of people don't realize. Like, I don't, as a data guy who's working in this industry, I don't use a smartwatch. I try to be as private as possible with my cookies tracking and all that, because it's true that they know everything. I'm giving a lecture at the Rome Business School at the end of March about healthcare and data, and part of the focus I'm putting on is it's good, but it's also scary because they know everything, and we allow that to happen. And I think the movement to blockchain and 3.0 is taking that back into our own hands.
Very cool. Very, very good. So, should we continue, or do you want to?
I gotta go because I can hear my kids waking up. So
no worries.
They're gonna start making a ruckus. So.
Oh yeah. What time is it there?
It's 2:36 p.m.
Okay. Yeah. No worries. It's it's 7:30. Yeah. 38 minutes past. Yeah. That's been a really fascinating conversation. Thank you so much for your time. And I know we had this organized for earlier on in the week, and I got pulled away. So yeah, sorry about that. But
no, that's okay. You mentioned you're lecturing. Where are you lecturing right now?
So I teach at the College of West Anglia, which is a college in Kings Lynn, and they have campus in Cambridge and Peterborough. And it's sort of affiliated with Anglia Ruskin University, so that I do the degree courses for those guys.
Nice. That's an area I'm exploring right now. I love teaching and mentoring, and I mentor businesses at a couple of incubators in Europe, and I used to own a corporate training firm, doing training for big clients. I love that space, and now I'm giving this lecture in the Rome Business School. And it's an area that maybe I'll jump into it. So I'll reach out to you for tips.
Yeah. Well, the only tip I can give you, which you probably already nailed, is just be organized. That's it. And just be yourself, like be authentic, because the students can spot that. And the main thing that I go with is, if you don't know the answer for something, like if they ask you a question, just tell them. Just be honest. Just don't try and BS them. Just be like, oh, that's a great question. I tell you what, I'll get back to you on that. Or, yeah, that's a really cool question. Why don't we go and find that out together? Something like that. So it's not.
Yeah, no, and that's important for our field, because I feel that I have a love-hate relationship with education in general, because when you go to a full degree course, by the time the course material is approved, it's already old. Right?
Yeah.
So you're never going to be, and especially if you are in a university setting, it's really hard to teach something that's current. So that's why I have a love-hate relationship with what I learned in university versus what I learned while doing it.
Yeah.
So that's why I like the corporate setting more and the incubator type of setting better, because you're doing things with them, right? So.
Yeah, and it's more current. Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Well, thanks so much for coming on and sharing all that information. It's been amazing. And actually, I think one of the first, if not the first, on point, on theme episode for this podcast. I've been trying for ages. It's taken almost a year to get my first proper technical episode. So thank you so much.
Perfect. Lovely to be here, and thank you for hosting me. If I ever go ahead with my own podcast, I'll host you as well.
Yeah, sure, of course. And you can come back anytime.
Thank you.
After we wrap up, I'll send you over some those NFTs that I've been working on.
Perfect.
You can let me know what you think.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Paul.
Lovely to meet you.
Likewise.
Cheers. Take care. Bye. Bye.